G'day guys, Chris here from Vo-Gus Prospecting. If you're new to the channel, a big warm welcome, and if you're an old moldy hat like this one, a big welcome back to season 2, episode 2. On today's show, we're going to show you how to use nothing more than a gold pan to lead you to the best deposit of gold on any creek system. Now in episode 1, I took you through the basics and the fundamentals of using simple equipment to mine areas and get the best gold you can without spending an absolute fortune on your gear. But today I want to actually show you the working principles behind that. I want to actually show you how you can discover your own gold on a creek to make it worth your while, and basically show you the difference between a miner and a prospector. A miner is someone who works a deposit of gold, and a prospector is someone who searches for it. In my capacity, I do both, and it's likely that you will as well. But a lot of people just jump straight into the creek, go to a likely spot which might be indicated by low pressure, and start digging a big hole, and they might not be on the best gold in the area. And that's what we're going to do today with one of these. This is your gold detector. This is better than any gold machine on the market currently. I'll guarantee you that this will lead you to amazing gold if you know how to use it. And I want to teach you the fundamental skills behind what I did in episode 1, which is actually looking for the gold. Today I don't want to actually put you in a creek and show you about low pressure systems. You know, I've done 233 videos on Vo-Gus prospecting, of which probably 231 of them I've been talking about low pressure systems. So instead I want to show you something different. I want to take you to a dry riverbed, and I'm going to show you about the gravels, because not many people talk about the gravels in a creek system, and the gravels are somewhat more important than low pressure systems. This will become clear as I go on throughout this episode. So this is the dry creek bed that we're working. And then it just sort of keeps going that way for a couple of kilometers. In episode 1, I showed you a whole heap of tools that you should be using if you're going out for the first time. It's just the basics. These are the exact same tools. The only difference is I've got my Gold Rat river sluice in here as well. All you're going to need to do your test pans, shovel, pick, classify, pan. You don't need anything else, and this is what's going to lead you straight to the gold. I must reiterate that the total amount of gold that I'm going home with today is not as important as finding where the deposit is. If I only go home with a 0.1 or less, it doesn't actually matter, because it means that I can come back to that spot. I know exactly where the gold is, and I'll clean up. I'll get a much bigger cleanup than if I just jump out there and start digging straight away. Here is a beautiful erosion example of what's going on as a crosscut section in this dry creek bed. So now we can actually see the layers. Let's talk layers. Each layer represents a different amount of water running over this creek and different flood events happening. Down here we've got lots of large rocks. Now large rocks usually indicate hard packed. It's been put in here slowly. These are good indicators that there could be gold here. It's slow moving, it's dense, so gold has a hard time actually penetrating through it. Up here we've got more loose gravel. These sort of gravels are the sort of gravels that have been put in here maybe by a flood. So you might have had a big rain event like what we've got going on right now. A lot of gravel gets washed downstream, and you get this. It's full of silt, it's full of smaller gravels, and usually you won't find overly much gold in it. It's what you call your overburden layer. There's a better example of it just over here. This layer here, you can see it, very fine gravels, lots of silt, and not a lot of large rock embedded in it. And that is a really good indication that could have been a flood layer going through. When you compare it to this section here where you've got lots of dense rock, which looks like the original riverbed is slowly working its way downstream, and that's more of a hard packed layer. A lot of these rocks are jammed in there. We've also got things like bedrock contact. So we've got a nice big shelf of bedrock here, and we've got some beautiful gravels packed in nice and hard with large gravels and small gravels all mixed together. This is your ideal layer in any creek system when it's underwater. This is the stuff you want to work. And I've said it time and time again, the reason you want a yabby pump is because of all these little nooks and crannies. All these little nooks and crannies are what hold on to gold, and your shovel will come across, scooch across the top of that tiny little depression there and not pick up any gold in it. And this is what this layer is doing. This is the very bottom layer, so you know that the gold can't go any further. further. So taking tests from there is really important. And then there are a heap of other different layers in a creek that you can't see in this cross cut. You might get a silt layer. Silt layers happen when flash floods happen. So you might get a bucket load of rain up in the hills, lots of water comes in over the top, and you get a lot of dirt and erosion happening, and the flash flood leaves just as quickly as it comes. It drops all that silt, and you might get a layer that's an inch thick, a foot thick, 3 foot thick, and it will look like clay. Usually these layers don't have much rock in them, and they're pretty worthless for gold, except for two things. Just on top, there might be an inch or so of gravels that have permeated that layer. Now that layer is really worth working because it acts like a false bottom, a false bedrock. So work just that top inch of any silt layers that you see, or dig through them. Try and dig through them and see what they were laid in over the top of, because you don't know if there's a hard pack layer just underneath it. You might get to a spot, find really good gold, and then the gold might disappear, and that's because it is sitting in layers, and that's why it's important to identify the correct layer. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a test sample off the top out of this, just in this area right there, dead center of the creek, and it's only maybe half a foot down. Then we're going to take a test pan from down lower. We're going to take it from just here, which is sitting sort of just above where the bedrock layers are. See what spec count we get in that. Then we're going to come back down here. I already scratched one out from down here, but I didn't get a very large sample size. Then we're going to take another test pan from just here and see what we get when we're on hard bedrock contact. The whole time we're going to be checking the indicators of gold. So there's a big difference between an indication and an indicator of gold. I've said this before. An indication of gold is a piece of gold. It means if you do a pan and you get a bit of gold, you found an indication of gold. An indicator of gold is things like tin oxide or black sand, ironstone, the makeup of the soil. So you might find that there's a grey clay with it, and that grey clay, every time you find it, you find really good gold. Well, that's an indicator of gold. These are the things you need to take note of. A lot of people just dig holes and don't look at the soil makeup. When you start seeing certain colors, certain textures, certain accumulations of rock, it might not be ironstone and tin oxide, it might be quartz, it might be shale. There's certain rocks that will sit with your gold in certain creeks. So pay attention to what's actually going through your pan or your sluice, and you'll be able to identify where the gold's sitting. So that's what we're doing. Pan 1, let's go. I noticed a soil change almost immediately. These top 6 inches here are sort of a brown tan clay. As you get lower, you can start to see some red oxides in there. Now, red oxides mean things like ironstone and tin that are rusting out, they're oxidizing, and you get that nice looking color. So we stopped before we cut into that layer, and we did this for one reason only. If there was a ton of gold in here and we took a cross cut down into that tin oxide layer, we might assume that because of the good indicator of gold, that the gold's in that. But if it was in this and we took both, we wouldn't know. So we needed to only take one. That's why we do tests methodically. So we test this, if there's no gold, we come back and we test this, and then we'll have a better understanding if it's sitting in here or here.
Let's go.
Just finished doing my first test pan, and when I do my test pans, I look out for a couple of things. As I'm panning it down, I look for consistency of soil. Is it clay-like? Is it sticking together? Is it really loose? Is it full of very fine gravel? Is it full of very large gravel? What kind of makeup is in the actual soil? I'm making a mental note of these. You could use a diary, it does help when you first start, so you know what to look for when you start working the area, when you start mining the area. If you don't do this, then you're still going in blind. So keep an eye on what's going on in your pan with the soil makeup. And then I start looking for indicators of gold. on this creek, I know geologically it's full of ironstone. So that's my main #1 heavy thing that I'm looking for. And in this one, I only found a couple of pieces. At the end result, I got one tiny dot of gold. So I know this is not worth processing. I can throw that top couple of inches away and not risk losing anything decent. We're onto that red oxide layer, and what we're going to do is chip this off down till about there. So we're going to take off roughly the same amount, maybe 4 or 5 inches worth of soil, and just see what's in that. Once again, there was a soil change. Just here it goes back to that tan colored dirt that we got up the top. So we've taken pretty much nothing but red dirt out of here. A little bit of that clay stuff came through, but not too much. So we should get a good sample from this. Now I should point out, low pressure systems are important. This is what you should be doing on top of a low pressure system. If you do it on top of a low pressure system, you take notes of the different soil changes, this is how you'll find the gold. What I'm doing now is just showing you the fundamentals of how you actually go about testing these soils and what you should be looking for. But don't forget the other stuff. There are a whole heap of little nuances that you need to get right to make this work for you. So make sure that you go back, watch some of my videos. We give out lots of tips on, you know, how to work certain types of areas and certain bits of bedrock and soil types and all that sort of stuff. This is just learning about why you should test and how you should test. There's one other thing that you got to know about this sort of area too, is that if you, let's just say for instance, this was an inside bend. If this came around a nice corner, I wouldn't just dig a hole there. What I would do is what you call trenching. I would dig a hole there and then 1 foot over there, 1 foot over there, 1 foot over there, and you get this line, and you would actually count the specks. So say we got out of this hole 3 specks, and then we got 5 specks, and we got 10 specks, and then we got 3 specks. We know the pay streak's running through here, and that's why you always cut a trench going across your low pressure system. Then what you're going to do is start doing exactly the same thing this way, and you should get an X marks the spot of where that lead is actually going. We had about the same soil consistency. It wasn't any stickier, it wasn't any different. We got about the same amount of ironstone, and we got exactly the same amount of gold, 1 speck per pan. So we know those first 2 layers aren't worth working, they're overburdened, and we can just throw them straight to the side. We've done those first 2 layers out of the top there. Now between those 2 layers and the bedrock is almost 0 ground. So we're actually going to come back to this little test hole that I started digging. We'll work some of this dirt off it and out of it, look for a soil change, and then test that dirt. So it's either going to be on bedrock contact or in a false bottom, so a clay layer or something like that. We don't know yet. We've got to get digging into it. This is why we keep an eye on soil makeup as we do our test bands. There's a lot more ironstone started through this rock than there has been in the last 2 pans. So I'm willing to bet that there will be gold in this. Let's find out. Well, you can see the ironstone running down there. Absolutely tons of it, way more, probably 3 or 4 times the amount of ironstone. And we have got 1 bit of gold up the top there. Now that bit of gold is about 2 or 3 times the size of what I was getting those first 2 pans. So it's a good indicator, or a good indication of gold, and it's a good indicator that the gold is getting better the deeper I go. So we're going to go for another pan, see if we can't get a little bit deeper. I just moved this really big rock from this spot here, and we've got a completely different colored soil there, which is awesome. So we've got bedrock here. We know that if any gold that's dragging itself along the bottom is going to hit this lip and follow that bit of bedrock down, just like I have. Now, this big rock has been trapped in what looks to be a bowl. I'm reckoning that somewhere in here is going to be that gold deposit that I'm after, because any bit of gold is going to drop straight down and it's not coming back out of there. That is a piece of shattered bedrock, which means that this pan is what we call bedrock contact dirt. We did a little bit better. We've got 3 pieces of gold. One there, and a tiny little nano dot just there. Now that we're actually on bedrock, we want to get down to those nooks and crannies and really clean that up properly to get a very accurate sample. That was more of a mixed bag of dirt that had a little bit of overburdeny stuff and a little bit of bedrock stuff in the same pan. I'm not sure that you're going to be able to see all of them, but there's about a dozen bits in my pan. You should definitely be able to see 3 or 4 of them, and most of them are very fine micro bits of gold, and that is actually a pretty good result. Almost fallen over there. So what have we learnt from that? The first pan we did was right off the top, the stuff that's just been laid in yesterday pretty much, and it didn't really give us very much gold at all. It gave us one tiny little nano dot. Our next pan gave us a speck. It actually gave us a proper bit of gold, which was good, which means that there could be deposits in that layer if I found a likely spot. Now, what I mean a likely spot, low pressure zone, so inside bend, behind obstruction, something like that. But we weren't on one of them, we were just testing soil types. Though both those soils, none of them were sticky, they were both very loose gravels, and that just told me that basically there was no way for the gold to stop there. It was permeating straight through that layer on its way to the bedrock. The very next layer that we got was a little bit sticky. It was nice, and we got an okay bit of gold out of it, a couple of bits, nothing major, but we were on bedrock contact at that point. So what I had to do was clean up where I was working and break into that bedrock a little bit. As I've said on multiple videos before, you have to smash up the bedrock properly to get all the gold out of it. So that's what I did, and in that one I got about a dozen specks of gold. Now we're talking very, very fine gold on that spot, but we're not in a low pressure zone. And that's the thing that I haven't shown you today, is that you need to be on a low pressure zone for that to work. It's just much easier to show you in a dry riverbed where you can see a cross section of it, as opposed to underwater where I can't show you that. Those dozen bits of gold tell me one thing, that there is good gold on the bedrock. And if I can find a likely spot along that dry creek bed, it'd be worth digging straight to that bedrock, testing the layer that's sitting on it, the layer that's sitting in the bedrock, and that second layer we worked where there was a couple of nice bits of gold, because remember, on a low pressure system, that layer potentially may have more gold on it. To summarize the day, what I wanted to tell you was just how important this is. Identifying a low pressure system is important. It's incredibly important to finding gold, but not as important as noting what's going on in the soil. After all, the soil is where the gold actually is, and finding layers of soil that will stop gold on its transit down to the bedrock is the most important thing you can do. There's no point moving 6 tons of overburden and not getting a great cleanup when you could have just worked a layer that was half a foot thick, full of gold. We've got 2 really quick announcements as well. The first announcement is I'm going to take a short break from YouTube, around 2 or 3 weeks, just to get some of my own personal stuff sorted out. As you might know, I do have PTSD, and recently, coming into summer, my symptoms tend to get worse. I'm taking some time out to deal and manage with those things. I will be back. I've got lots planned for the next episodes, which is where we're going to be using river sluices. I'm going to do an episode where I show you how to use a river sluice, and then all the information on about setting them up. So basically, we're going to do the same thing, demonstration day, and then all the technical information. So I can't wait to get that out there and show you guys that awesome event. But in the meantime, I am going to be taking some time off from uploading into YouTube. I will be putting posts up on Facebook if you're not part of my Facebook page, so jump on that, and Instagram as well. There will be some stuff going up on that, and I will be filming the videos. I'm just not going to be actually uploading them. It takes that bit of pressure off me. Well guys, that's all I've got for you for this episode. I wanted to thank you massively for watching my video. I know it was a bit more of an educational one, but I had a lot of fun making it, and it is a technique and principle that is very important for you to learn so you can find more gold. I'm about to head down there so I can go and try and get some more of that beautiful shiny yellow northeast gold. Okay guys, I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Peace, love ya, I'm out.